Yo, yo, it's ODB from OLP. Thanks for coming back and listening and/or viewing this content via our YouTube channel. I've said time and time again, you're going to get a much better experience if you can watch and consume this content via YouTube. It really helps the channel out. Watch it to the end, listen to the end. And thanks for all that you guys do to help us grow here. We really appreciate it. This episode 386, I'm going to do myself because we know where Miggity Mike the Mayor is. He's out gallivanting, ain't he? It's summertime, kind of basically for him. His customers are away, so his home watch business is popping off. I want to take a moment to thank our title sponsor, Scraping the Coast, every June. This year, it's June 20th through the 22nd in Biloxi. The pre-reg is still going on. You want to get with Lauren Miller or visit Scrapin with an IN, thecoast.com for more information. Now, as we jump into this episode, I also want to thank Phoenix Forged. I talked about them recently with our new OLP awards, which we'll be giving one of these away at STC, Scraping the Coast. And Phoenix, Fenix, Forged with a D. There's going to be a lot more coming about their wheels, but if you're looking for some one-offs or other things for your daily driver or your show truck, hit up Phoenix Forged. Good people. They're on Instagram. They're on Facebook. So I want to thank Dennis. The last episode, if you haven't listened, it was a lot of fun to put together. Number one, Dennis has a link in. Dennis also won the Roadster Shop / Good Guys giveaway OBS. And what an awesome story. So many of you have commented, had, text me and said, hey, I listened to it. I really enjoyed the content. So, thanks to everybody that consumes the content. I really appreciate it. On this episode, we're going to have Grant Cox. You may recall his name. Many of you know it, some may not, but Grant is, in my opinion, a world-class photographer. What he's been doing for the past 10 plus years, even really longer, going back, and he'll tell his story, is just remarkable. So love to see the continued success and keep doing what you're doing. Yeah, definitely world class, and just love to see success, and keep doing what you're doing, brother. The episode overview is brought to you by Hammered Weekend Wear. I want to throw this out there. They got the pre-sale that is going on. I think it may have just ended, but you had this choice of the Ram, or you had this choice, and it's like, how do you pick, right? Just know HAMMERD weekendwear.com. Let them know that OLP sent you. They're good folks. They've got skate deck stickers, so much more. Hammered Weekend Wear. Okay. I'm going to keep this intro as short as I can. We got breaking news, and this is definitely some news I would hate to share with anyone. And this news broke at the time of this recording a little over a week ago, about a week and a half ago now, that TC Coleman, longtime Mini Madness member, passed away. Many of you know TC. Many of you know of his presence, his affiliation, of course, with Slamfest and just Mini Madness crew. And our heartfelt condolences go out to them. We saw them last weekend, many of them at Vic's The Pull Up, which is a Tampa cruise-in that's free, which is kind of every few months. He announces a new cruise-in, and it was heartfelt, hearing some of what was shared there about TC, the love of the scene, the love of, just so many people coming together every year for Slamfest, which has been going on a very, very long time now, 30 plus years. So rest in peace to the OG. If you want to find more, I'm going to share a couple of photos I've taken of his stuff in the past. I joked with TC many times about, TC's fleet. He had so many cool projects and different rides. One of my favorite hashtags, he used it, I used it as well, and it tied into the license plate on his C30 dually that Scrapin' Customs and later Jimmy's Running Customs basically put together for him. This is awesome, what he called farm truck, but the number one and then the word ton, number one, TON, rat, RAT, 1 ton rat. And there's some curated posts past, and we'll do a couple of present that tie into TC and his legacy. Rest in peace to him, to his friends and family, club mates, the colleagues, if you will, in the scene. We're definitely thinking of you guys, and we know he was a big mainstay in the Florida area, but of course he would go to Detroit Autorama and so many other shows, SEMA and things like that. And he'd get around, and he had some cool projects, including some with him and his pops. So tip of the cap, rest in peace, man. And I always say this, tell your friends or acquaintances or loved ones that you appreciate them, right? Or talk with them if that's what you want to do, because you just never know when it's going to be a situation where you don't see anyone again. Rest in peace, TC Coleman. The breaking news is brought to you by our kinfolk at Lone Star Throwdown. Lone Star Throwdown is an epic car and truck show, mostly trucks, every February in Conroe, Texas. If you want to come out, visit LoneStarThrowdown.com. Let's not forget the Lone Star family has grown, and of course, they have Classic Truck Throwdown, very similar look and feel on their website. If you visit Classic Truck Throwdown, just how it sounds, you're going to see there are only, this is hard to believe based upon where my mind's at right now, 23 days away. And that's because the show is now, they moved it up a little bit. And basically, it's June 7th and 8th, same bat time, same bat channel. I guess not the same bat time, but the same bat location in Conroe at the awesome fairgrounds there, if you will. So technically, it's the Lone Star Expo Center. So I want to get that right. But again, ClassicTruckThrowdown.com for more information. Okay, next we got the general updates. This one's short and sweet. This weekend is relaxing in the park. I didn't feel like I did enough to really reinforce that show. You know, Jason B, aka DJ Mays, the other Jason B, my big homie, my brother, who has a new podcast, by the way, Behind the Decks. DJ Mays Behind the Decks, DECKS. Him and their chapter of RA up there, they put on Relaxing in the Park, and that's in Festus. If you get a chance, if you're listening to this on Friday and you're up that way, get out there and support the real deal. Also, this weekend is Made of Steel show here in Florida. I think it's the 11th annual. It's been going on a while now, and you know, these folks, these clubs, these club mates and club members, if you will, you know, they put their neck out on the line to put together a show to get people to come out and have a good time. Oftentimes, it's done for not for profit, right? It's just for the kindness out of people's heart, maybe to raise some money for charity and do some great things. And I know both of these shows are very similar in what they're looking to accomplish and kind of give back to the scene and the community. The general updates is brought to you by our kinfolk at Southeast Mini Truckin Nationals, aka Mini Nats, every April in Maggie Valley. And oh, by the way, they are also expanding. If you go on Instagram, I think it's SE All Truck Nationals. SE stands for Southeast. So it's SE and then the word All Truck Nationals, just how it sounds. That's their new show. And of course, that's in Maggie Valley. This is going to be the first annual, aka inaugural, which is going to be towards the beginning of October. And it's October, I think it's the weekend of October 10th. Got to make sure that they, Perry or Jason puts that in the bio here, because the artwork that they released, I think, just says Southeast All Truck Nationals, Maggie Valley, North Carolina. The significance of this show is, remember, 5 years ago, Mini Nats was pushed because of COVID, and it went into the month of October, and people loved it. Now, we know the Showdown in the Valley has also appeared, and that has been a go-to show for so many because they moved their event. My understanding, that weekend opened up, and as you could imagine, with the Valley loving everything that Jason Bell's doing, he decided, hey, it's time to grow our family of events, and that's what he's doing. Hit them up. Many of us are going to be up there in October for the All Truck Nationals. You can pre-register now. Okay, next we got the trivia with Miggity Mike the Mayor, who's out gallivanting. I got one question for you, all the Mini Truckin Syndicate listeners out there. Are you ready? And Mike is ready to get it wrong. So this is a two-parter, one of my favorite films, not even a cult classic, I would say an all-time classic, Ferris Bueller's Day Off. This is going to be the honor system, and I'm going to ask a two-part question. So number one, what is the name of the infamous high school in the film Ferris Bueller's Day Off? What is the name of the high school in the infamous film Ferris Bueller's Day Off? In the fictional Shermer High School is a pivotal location in Ferris Bueller's Day Off, but also the Breakfast Club, 16 Candles. But Ferris Bueller's Day Off actually features an exterior shot and this was John Hughes's own high school, Glenbrook North High School. If you are a fan of 80s films into the 90s and you don't know the name John Hughes, you've certainly seen the films, you know of the films. Do me a favor, go out there and just search on your phone John Hughes films and look at how many he was tied to. Everything from National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation to Ferris Bueller's Day Off, just so many. Now, the second part of this question is one that many of you may not get unless you're a hardcore fan of this film. Do you know the Easter eggs that are tied in this film to the license plates on the vehicles? So there's multiple vehicles in this film, obviously, and there's abbreviations on these, quote, vanity license plates. Okay, you may not have never known this, but it's a cool thing to tie in. So just to reinforce, most of the license plates in the film are abbreviations for titles of movies by, you guessed it, John Hughes. You got Katie's, which is VCTN, National Lampoon's Vacation. Jeannie's, TBC, which is The Breakfast Club. Tom's is M Mom, Mr. Mom. And Rooney's is number 4, FBDO, and that's Ferris Bueller's Day Off. The exception is Cameron's Ferrari with a license plate that reads Nervous, NRVOUS. If you were today old when you learned of that, congratulations. I love movies. I love John Hughes. Rest in peace to the OG. And 80s, 90s, I mean, cult classics. There's also a bunch of Steven Spielberg's Easter eggs. I'll talk about more of those in the future. So many of you send me different links, and I certainly appreciate that. You know, there's tie-ins to Back to the Future, as well as the Goonies, kind of, quote, the same weekend, and that whole the whole world of Steven Spielberg's. And there's other Easter eggs, you know, going back all the way to Jaws, which, by the way, 50th anniversary this year, same as Truckin magazine, 1975. Good old 1975. The trivia with Miggity Mike the Mayor, who's out gallivanting, is brought to you by our kinfolk at Garage Gear Clothing. Visit garagegearclothing.com. They do have options for free shipping. They have sport trucks, mini trucks, full sizes. I think they even had a side-by-side at one point. They have gear for the ladies and for the children. It's garagegearclothing.com. Next, we got the scene updates brought to you by Local Rides, and I want to throw a huge shout-out to everybody out there that goes out and supports the scene. You don't have to go to every event, but if you can get out to a few, maybe buy a show shirt, right? Just get the band to go in, maybe register a vehicle. But also there's other ways, like you're supporting now if you're listening to this podcast. You support the scene by, you know, streaming the podcasts like The Drop on YouTube, listening to the podcast, maybe buying some merch from your favorite podcast team. All of that helps. And certainly I've continued to reinforce this. Everything we do goes back into our podcast or the scene. As an example, when we have Welch's Chop Shop every year create our awards for what we now call the OLP Honors, that's done out of the kindness of our heart to give back to the community, to give back to the scene that we love. So continue to support the scene any way that you can. I know not everybody can travel the shows, but there's other ways to support, and thank you for doing that. Again, scene updates brought to you by Local Rides Mag, and that's Rides with a Z. Trust me when I say Local Rides, RIDEZ magazine. That's an awesome magazine. If you go out to the website, you can find different items for sale, different issues rather, as low as I think $7.99. There's a lot of good information in these issues, and I would ask that if you get a chance, go out there, pick a few up. You can also get a 1-year subscription, which I believe is still technically 6 issues. Tip of the cap to Bill and team, his awesome wife, over there pulling the puppet strings, putting together Local Rides Mag. Hut 1, Hut 2, Hut 3, Hut, Old Dirty Ballard, Live and Uncut. This one's simple, and it goes back to what I just said. Support the magazine. So many of us wanted Mini Truckin Magazine to come back. We thought, what if? And it's back. Now, rightfully so, as I mentioned recently, I know they've had some hiccups. They're working back and doing everything they can to iron that stuff out. They're putting their neck out on the line, but if you can go out there and support the kinfolk at Mini Truckin Mag, at Local Rides Mag, there's CK Mag out there. There's street trucks. The new street trucks came, and you're seeing this here. If you're watching on YouTube, you're seeing this first. The owner of the truck, my big homie Tom. But right here it says, plus mini trucks inside. Yes, we still love them. You may not like a particular magazine, but I can tell you this: when they're gone, they're gone. So Let's continue to support the real deal and get out there and support the magazines. ODB Live N Uncut is brought to you by Phoenix Forged. Again, Fenix Forged. If you need billet wheels, hit them up. There's going to be more coming with hopefully a mini truck line of wheels, not just for the lifted, but of course that right now is their bread and butter. Last but not least, podcast updates from OLP. Go out there. We have Jason Watts' amazing OBS on pre-order. We're getting ready to drop some other cool stuff that's going to be in high demand. I guarantee it. Some very, very cool stuff that we work back with Graphic Disorder, best in the business. Check us out on our website, ROUR Lifestyle Podcast. Link is in the bio. Link is in the description. Link is in the Instagram. You find us. We appreciate it. We want to thank the freaking weekend show. I don't reinforce enough, but I want to reinforce now that the freaking weekend is 3 months after our title sponsor show, Scraping the Coast. So that third week in September, come on out, join us in Biloxi. They've got the pre-party on Friday. They've got the after party on Saturday. Tripp is doing a great job. He's out there hustling, doing the media. I can't find the video that I filmed at Mini Nats with Tripp. My phone was at 1%, so we borrowed someone's phone. If you happen to have the video, get with me. I need to obtain that. But for those that don't know, the freaking weekend show won OLP's 2024 show of the year, and we're proud to be a partner with him. We're already setting up what we're calling Mini Truckin' Row with OLP. They're at the amazing freaking weekend show. Come on out, join us. It's going to be a blast. With that being said, I've talked way longer than I anticipated. Stay on the rise. Please stick with us here to the end. Grant Cox, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. You're a good dude. And I just want to say to everybody out there, keep doing what you do. Follow Grant Cox Photo on social media. Stay on the rise, everyone. ODB, be safe. We out here. Peace. Yo, I always say I'm so excited, but I really am stoked to sit down with someone I became friends with and just someone that I got a lot of respect for. Grant Cox, thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Hello, Jason. Thanks for having me on. Pleasure to be here.
Dude, I'm so stoked to talk. I mean, Grant, like, we're going to go back through some of the history, just to kind of bullet point some things, folks. Like, we're going to talk about, how Grant got involved with trucks and all these different features he's done over the years, some of his personal builds, what he's working on now in, Mini Truckin' Magazine cover shoot he did. So we're going to hit on all that. If you're new here on YouTube, please watch to the end. I guarantee it's going to be fun, and we're going to keep some high energy. But I just want to kind of start with, like, how you doing, brother? How's everything going?
Doing good. It's becoming our normal storm season around here in the Midwest since I live in Wichita, Kansas. And, it used to be Tornado Alley here in the Midwest, but now it's kind of moved to the east, but we still get our tornadoes. So we're in between those patterns of systems and watching out for those guys to drop. So it's the Kansas thing.
Let me see here. So I usually never do this, but I want to pull this up. Like I don't think I've ever done this in an interview, right? So
Yeah,
when
right.
I pulled up and hold on, let me start here like this. Okay, so I never really done this. What I'm going to do is I typed in Wichita because I'm kind of curious, right? And when you zoom out, I've heard this before. It's almost smack dab in the middle of the U.S.
It is. Yeah, it's very close. The center of the U.S. is not too far away. I can't remember what my history is, but where it's at, but it's close.
Yeah.
And somewhere in there where it is the center of the United States.
Yeah. And so for, just for those at home, if you're listening to, via a podcast app, maybe you're watching on YouTube, but what you're going to see is, like, I'm always curious where people are from. So you think like Texas, that great state of Texas, and then just north of that is Oklahoma. But north of that is Kansas, and Kansas is west of Missouri. But let's not forget, Kansas City, for those scoring at home, is kind of on the line. It's actually in Missouri, and I think people tend to forget that. So I just wanted to mention that.
It is. So, there's always a battle between the Missouri side and the Kansas side. So when you say, you're going to Kansas City, if you're going somewhere, you have to ask the Missouri side or Kansas side, because, you have to navigate different routes, and the Kansas City is split in half. So it's pretty much a big loop, big racetrack all the way around it, and just kind of, it's a great place to go, though. Great place to. If
you're watching on YouTube, you're going to see Grant with kind of an eclectic mix of vehicles behind him and art and photographs. We're going to talk about a lot of that because he kind of dabbles in a lot. But I'd like, you kind of talked a little bit about where you where you're at now. Give the audience just like maybe a little bit of background about yourself, maybe like where you grew up. I mean, is that your stomping ground there, Grant?
Yeah, so I was born in Wichita. I grew up in Augusta, Kansas, which is about 12 miles east of Wichita. Um, so I'm a 70s kid. I'm born in 75, so grew up there. Um, Graduated in high school in Augusta. But growing up, I was always into cars and trucks, anything with wheels. As I grew up a little bit more, got into having big wheels to go fast around the streets. I was always the kid that was playing from the morning till the street lights turned off. So you knew that it was time to go home when the street lights were coming on, street lights and
Yeah,
yeah.
like the
So
famous
did
Warren's
that.
Reno.
Yes, that was no phones back then. So when those streetlights came on, you knew that it was time to go home. But I was always a kid outside messing around, building things. And once about grade school, I think, is when we started getting into BMX bikes. Friends had them, my neighbors. It's just kind of a normal thing in the 80s. And of course, seeing the movie Rad and growing up with that movie, that was a big drive. And we all looked up to it and to have something that we were interested in. And so I got into BMX racing in grade school with my best friend and had fun doing that. That just kind of drove that need for speed and jumping and tinkering and fixing things. So I was always kind of a kid that likes to build and repair and figure things out,
Yeah.
mechanical skills and doing stuff like that.
Curious, like shop class, Hot Wheels, were those also kind of parts of like your pedigree?
Yeah, so like middle school, I did your wood shop and metal shop, course art. I was always in every art class through middle school and high school. In high school, I would do art competitions, and my work's been featured in museums here in Wichita. As my junior and senior year, I've had artwork in museums. So it's just kind of been fun doing all that stuff. No photography. It's more, pastels and pens and colored pencil type stuff. So it's that type of media that I would use.
Dang, that's awesome. Now, when you think back to the 70s, if I remember correctly, I always want to say in my mind, Mongoose was like around 78, but like we knew out of the late 70s is really when BMX, which for those that don't know, BMX is like bicycle motocross, right? It's kind of like that acronym that was formed all those years ago. And it seemed like it was like thrust out of the 70s, like we've heard so much about like the vanners that they the high gas prices and all the different cars and how that kind of thrust us into the 80s when, it seemed like everybody was making money and, everything was lavish. But the BMX stuff was so neat because it was thrust out of the 70s and like in the 80s, it really took off. And I remember as a kid I loved going to the grocery store. Well, I hated it, but I found my love down the magazine aisle. And
Yes.
I thumbed through that, and begged my parents, buy this magazine. And it mostly, believe it or not, for me, it was mostly bike magazines. I did have a few skateboarding magazines, but I would watch, you'd see that stuff and like, man, how are these guys doing all that stuff? Did that really like grab you? And that's what kind of got you into like wanting to do more with that?
Yeah, very much so. I love magazines. BMX Plus. Remember that magazine? So that was one of I remember having that magazine a lot. And then getting like Car and Driver and Motor Trend and Hot Rod magazines back then. And as the trend, once I got closer to driving age, because in Kansas back then, you could get restricted at 14. So when I was 14, I was driving. You could drive unrestricted. And so that's when, Truckin magazines were around. And I started getting, once I learned in customizing vehicles and being around my friends who were had car dads, they taught me a lot about anything you can make and make it your own style. So that I really gravitated to, oh, I can take this truck or this car and change the wheels or put this accessory or, whatnot. Wichita had a great amount of accessory shops. So one was like super shops back then. I don't think it's around anymore, but it was a chain that was performance parts and accessories and wheels and tires. And I remember going there, I was 14, 15 years old and looking at, what I could take from the magazines and put it on my truck, so,
Very cool.
but yeah, my first truck was I think an '80s Datsun. It's like a 5-speed single cab. I didn't, think it was cool back then, but my dad. That's how I learned on a stick shift. Was my first vehicle, and started going down the avenue. And then once I heard sound systems, stereos, Alpine and Pioneer and Sony, I just gravitated towards that as well.
Yeah, and it's funny because before we talk about photography, we're having this conversation about everything that was, I mean, I constantly, for the past 15, 20 years, like I'll go and I'll look on the internet for stuff that I remember as a kid that like maybe the kid that was a little bit older, like, a pull out cassette player. I didn't have one, but we had CD players. And I think we just grew up in an era where that stuff is so nostalgic. The 80s, they talk about kind of the Reagan era when the Wolf of Wall Street type situations, and people were making buku bucks and all this. And my parents were blue collar. Mom was a waitress. Dad worked for the phone company. Telephone man with a van. He'd come fix your telephone. He worked there for 30 years. So they gave us a great childhood. But like I didn't have the most Nintendo games. But we would, trade each other and, can I borrow this and, swap and things like that. But I do believe most people, I read an article not too long ago, most people kind of feel like the music that was in their high school era was like the best in their mind because it's like, you're still developing. But if you look back to like the era of the 80s and the 90s, like, man, like two amazing decades. And like we could go on about movies, bikes, skateboarding, all that stuff, the magazines. I mean, it was all epic.
There's so much, and that's what's fun teaching my kids of showing them the stuff from the '80s and '90s. And I mean, it's just a different time, and really a lot of things came out, with the TV shows and the movies and the music and the clothing and dancing. I mean, all the different styles of break dancing and going through glam rock and hair bands to grunge to gangster rap with NWA and
Yeah.
Mr. Mix a Lot and DJ Magic Mike and for bass stuff. I mean, it was all over the place.
Yeah, it definitely was. But again, we'll talk a little bit about this kind of stuff. But I was kind of curious, right? So you talk a little bit about art and you talk about some of those early influences on you. And like I was amazed, wow, you had some pieces, straight out of high school, if you will, and the local museums and stuff is so neat. Now, in the past, I want to give a shout out to Adam Johnson. And I know even Ronnie, you've been a past guest many years ago on C10 Talk. Adam Johnson did a great interview and I pulled some stuff from it. But like I'm curious for the listener, like how do you get involved in photography if that maybe wasn't a super big draw for you, maybe like even in high school?
So my history of photography, man, I even have my original camera. Hold on a second. So here is like a 35 millimeter type disc Kodak camera that I have from my childhood, early 80s, that my dad had or gave me. But my dad always had a camera, did photography type stuff, just kind of his own, I don't know, sports and wildlife type. And I remember like thunderstorms too. We'd go out in thunderstorms and take pictures at nighttime and try to get flash, that type of stuff. And so I've always kind of been around it with my dad. Um, and then being around cars and going to car shows, I started wanting to take pictures like the magazines. That's what we've talked about before, getting the magazines off the newsstand and looking those. And I'd just be sitting there just going, oh, Countach and Testarossa and, this big lifted C10 or something to that effect, with the big super slumpers. And so we'd have lots of hot rod shows here in the Midwest and Wichita area. And so my parents would take me, I'd want to take pictures so I could have those pictures. And so it kind of evolved from a camera like that to, more different type of film cameras. My dad did a photography class in high school. He was a teacher at high school in Augusta. And I'd go into the dark room with him and he'd show me how to develop 35 mil and other type of formats and stuff. And so just growing up around that, he would teach me settings of cameras and doing how to use it and how to compose and finding the right lens for whatever shot you're doing and speed and all that. Because those were all film cameras back in the 80s and 90s. And then him and my dad and my mom got into a side business of doing portrait photography, senior pictures, weddings, family type stuff. And then I'd go with him if my mom didn't go and then help out. So I'd watch him do, uh, whatever type of photography job he did. And that was something on the side that him and my mom liked to do for some extra money.
Yeah, side hustle.
Yeah. So I grew up around that, going through high school. I guess so. When my firstborn son was in '06, I started picking up cameras more to get better quality cameras. I've always had a camera, it's a digital camera, just for taking pictures, but nothing like a big expensive camera because of my car stuff. My money dumped into all my cars and trucks. I didn't have money for a nice, big, expensive camera. And so once my son was born, I got into a bigger camera and wanted to take pictures of him and just capture the life, them growing up and just doing that type of stuff. And my dad suggested this, that, and the other. And I went down the Nikon path and got a camera and just started taking pictures. And then that evolved into me turning into a side hustle of portrait photography like my dad. So I did senior pictures, weddings, family pictures, baby pictures. And I did that for a good 5 years. So
And that's a big thing, right? Because even my friend Paul, he does photography as a hobby, like with kickball and stuff. Like he was sending me photos, like he bought the little backdrop and he was like doing his son's like school photos instead of going and spending, some people spend hundreds of dollars, which is fine. But other people are a little bit more thrifty. And it was neat because I was like, wow, those look like school pictures, right? But that's photography is still a huge thing with all that.
yes, yeah, and so and while I had that camera, I'd be out with my car friends, and of course, car meets and whatnot, and I'd take pictures, and I'm like, I just started doing my natural thing, taking pictures of cars, and then people would be like, "Man, you should submit those pictures. Like you take good pictures." Oh, thank you, and it's fun. I enjoy taking pictures of cars. I've been doing it since I was a kid. So one of my best friends had an S10, Andy McNair. And it was a second gen. It was the round body, and it was body dropped. It had a full paint job, wheels, interior, and I found this cool spot location, and it looked like a prison. It was a school, but it looked like a prison, which is kind of way it was made. Anyways, took those pictures, and he's like, "Man, you need to submit this into Mini Truckin." So I looked up, and John Mata Jr. was the editor at that time. I'm like, "Hey, my name's Grant. I'm in Wichita, and I got a truck to show you and see what you think." So he's like, "Love it. We'll take it." And I was like, "Really?" I was really shocked. And so we started talking, and John was just really cool. It was very natural, laid back, and I have to give him credit for getting me into the industry.
Really? That's
So
great. Yeah,
so
that's
once
fantastic.
he saw that, he was like, "Hey, I got a job for you." He's like, "How far? Kansas City?" And so I said, "Oh, about depends, 2 to 3 hours." And John said, "Well, I got this Nissan hardbody. I think it's really cool." And he showed me pictures. And he's like, the owner's name is Pat Cox. And I said, "Well, that's really cool. That's a nice truck. I don't know him." He's like, "No relation, but he owns this automotive shop up in Kansas City, and KC Auto Works, I believe, is what it was called, and he still
Yeah, and
is.
on the
He's still
screen, this
up
is
there.
the cover truck you're talking about, right?
Correct. So I called up Pat, and he's a cool guy as well. And a mini trucker, just one of those, lifelong mini trucker guys. Really nice guy. And so I made plans my first time, for as a, hey, editor, send me up here to shoot a vehicle. Let's make magic happen. And I was just got my elements. And so Pat took me down. That was in West Bottoms of Kansas City, which is on the Kansas side. Yes, on the Kansas side, downtown area. And that is one of the bridges that connects upper downtown Kansas City to the West Bottoms area. And then we shot that at nighttime, say maybe 9 or 10 o'clock. Luckily, there's no traffic. As you can see, I parked right in the middle of a 2 lane, and I had my lights. I had some strobes, and to try to light it up and give some type of, because the paint was a root beer. It's a really unique paint. And then, of course, we had different lighting from the bridge that was, I don't know, tungsten or some type of color light. So it was kind of funky, and it made out for a cool picture, let's just say. And so we ended up shooting most of the day because I was just having fun, just enjoying shooting this badass truck. And that turned into a cover, and that ended up being my first gig that was requested, and it made cover.
Yeah, and that was December 2012. So when you think back, it really wasn't that long ago. I mean, we're talking 13, give or take. It's
Yes.
2025 now, right? So
Yeah. So that would have been 20, like I think the fall of 2011, because it takes, uh, you know, it takes a couple months to get out in print. As far as when he plans the book and publishes it. So I want to say I shot that around October, November of 2011. I want to say. But
yep.
yeah, that
Got
was a
it.
fun
Yeah.
time.
Now, what's neat though is in the Adam Johnson interview. So again, I'm going to put a link to it in the YouTube description if you're interested in kind of going down. It's not too in depth, but it gives some good information about Grant Cox. But what's neat though is if you look back at your portfolio of what you've done in the photography world related to automotive, I mean, it's a lot. I mean, it's a good amount of covers, dude. Like, I mean, and that past 12, call it 13 years, I mean, you've been a busy dude.
Yes, I ended up going out to California in probably 2014, no, 2012, 2013, and meeting a lot of the editors. And back then it was Source Interlink Media, and they were just like, "Oh, you're in Kansas? Great! I've got lots of stuff for you." And so I just kind of went down from each little area of Source Interlink and meeting all the editors and getting names and contacts and talking to them, and that was a real big part, getting a face with name and them meeting me and learning how I shoot and what I do and just my style, because I started out with natural light. We were in Kansas. We have beautiful sunsets, and I've had some really good mentors that's helped me tweak and hone in my style and my shots. I'd give credit to like Josh Mishler, who's also out of Kansas. He was a big street rodder. He shot for a lot of magazines, but he did a lot of street rodder stuff and just beautiful sunsets. Robert McGaffin, Johnny O, which shot this truck right here. I love Johnny's. I mean, he's been shooting for a long time, and he's such a good guy. Explain things like I look at his shoots and go, "Did you put your light here and do this? Key light and reflect off here?" And I just kind of spatial awareness of where things are going, because my brain's just turning on how he got that shot. So I'm like, I think you're shooting it like this and you're doing this. Is that correct? Yep.
Yeah, and one thing about Johnny O, and I saw when he helped, God, it was a year ago when Michelle Boone was doing the mini truck, former cover truck shoot at Mini Nats. He's not afraid at all to go, hey, look, let me help you. Like, yeah, sure. Because like some people get offended, like if somebody goes, well, hey, you could move this here a little bit, but you seem very willing to go, hey, I want to, reciprocate. Like, like I want to ask you some questions, but give me some feedback too.
Definitely. That's when a new photographer is. People ask me, hey, how do I get into this? And can you look at my shots? I'm like, yes, but you have to be able to take criticism, and not that I'm trying to bash you down, but I look at it as when I did, because I'm not perfect. There's always something I can improve on, and that's what I learned from the editors and my mentors. Like, try to improve on each feature. What did you do wrong? Look at it as that way. Like, was there a
Yeah,
pole
incrementally get a little better.
yeah, a pole or a bright spot or a tree that's in a reflection, or just a composure. Could you take it at a different angle? And so that's where I guess I didn't have bad habits. How about that? I had a concept of it, and in my brain, I could remember seeing magazines, and I'd try to recreate that and see that style, and then I just took it my own.
Sure. Yeah, and I think that's an important thing that if you want to get into an industry, whether it's photography or podcasting or whatever, you could also look at some of the all-time greats, right? But also when you think about like podcasting, or let's say you want to go out and get them do social media type stuff, an influencer or whatever you want to call them, you could watch people that are on the news. I mean, think about how often they're coached to go, hey, you had a great, newscast tonight, but you said and you did this. And that's one thing, like you won't hear people, the professionals on TV, they won't say, oh, well, up next, because right. So like I tell people all the time, you can glean for free so many different things, and there's so many resources to go, hey, Grant, like, I admire you. Take a look at my photo. Like, listen, I truly want to accept your feedback. Like, what do you think I could have did better? There's all those resources out there. So I mean, I love that aspect of it, man.
Appreciate it. It's something you just kind of, as a if you really want to get into it, you have to be able to accept criticism and then learn and take that into consideration and try to work out and then improve.
Yep. Now, what's neat is in that Street Trucks interview, if you think about how many features, and I won't even slice and dice it and go how many covers, but if you think about how much content you've created for the industry, right? And I love that you're not a one trick pony, meaning like you could go out and shoot a high end exotic sports car or a 64 Lincoln. I absolutely love that. But does it ever amaze you that if you thought about like how many features and or covers, however you want to slice it professionally, you've done a lot in the past just over 10 years.
Yeah, I think I'm coming around 80 covers, over 500 features, and that's around the world. So there's not just the U.S. stuff. There's stuff um, over in Europe and Thailand. I've shot for. And that was in the golden days, of course, before COVID and all the magazines. I was shooting for 19 magazines before COVID, and when the big bubble of the magazines got dispersed. So yes, I was quite busy traveling around, pretty much staying in the Midwest. I'd go out to SEMA and shoot lots of trucks and cars, mainly. I don't think I did any cars. Yeah, I did a couple cars out there on the dry lake beds and or around Vegas. There's been some great mini trucking features that we did. Me and John would go find some locations and just really cool stuff, with like, I mean, even like the last issue maybe of mini trucking had the yellow S10, the second gen the mural background I lit it up all with lights. So it was like at midnight in Vegas down on the strip. And we found this wall that had graffiti everywhere. And I had my lights with me. And so we lit it up. With my strobes, and it turned out to be Daniel's S10. It was yellow with a white interior, very like retro Art
Yeah.
Deco looking. I believe that was maybe the last issue,
Yeah.
and
And
the truck was on the cover, but it wasn't my shot for cover. I think it was John's maybe.
yeah. And that's what I was just looking at my database because I was like, man, maybe I had that wrong because I think that to your point, I have to go back and look at the table of contents and the feature, but they may have just put John Mata Jr.'s name, but sometimes we don't always know the person that maybe helped. So it sounds like you were there.
Yeah, so yeah, John was with me. I did the shoot with Daniel's yellow S10 there in Vegas, and we did two other features. I did a little mini semi that we found that was around that area, and we did for under construction back, when Mini Trucking did under construction features. And then we did I think it was a Mazda that was at SEMA, that was from Canada, and he came down, and we were cruising the strip, and I'm hanging out of the car doing rollers with the casinos in the background.
Yeah,
I don't
sick.
know if you can do that anymore, especially with all the F1 stuff going on, but
Yeah, yeah.
it's
And the
yeah,
manhole
those are the
cover.
good old days. Yeah, you're gonna tear up a truck if you get one of those things, let alone an F1 car.
Now, off topic, but really on topic, like I'm kind of curious, right? So it's weird. We're in this weird world of like content creation where Instagram, like I worked in the telecommunication industry for 21 years, right? And there was an app that the company that I worked at launched that they were trying to get everybody to go 90, like 90 degrees with their phone up and down, right? Portrait mode. And it never really took off. And then, you had the Vine app and, with 6 seconds and, Instagram eventually, I think it was Instagram or TikTok, like eventually got people to go, okay, look, do these vertical videos, which always was like, I was like, okay, for the longest time, we had this accelerometer and it was neat. We could turn our phone and, it was that format that we wanted. But I say all that because, like, do you feel like in the world that we are now, like for a while, it seemed like Instagram killed the photos. Like, remember, video killed the radio star. It seemed like Instagram kind of killed off the photos and they're going, hey, we know even if someone only watches 6 seconds of a video, that's longer than people are staying on maybe a photo where they're on there for a split second, right? Do you find yourself going, wow, like I love photos? Like I see a Brandon Burrell that goes, hey, I'm going to do some more video content and stuff. Are you like trying to bridge that gap and go, hey, I want to do more of this too?
I would love to do video. If I have a tough time with my brain thinking, because videographers are, especially people who can do both. Their brain is the way they can go from shooting a picture to be able to plan in their head how I'm going to shoot a video that's going to make sense at the end and make it cool. So that's 1 second here.
No, you're fine.
My dog's barking
That's
at
fine.
me. He
That's
wants
fine.
some. Anyways, sorry.
Yeah.
And
So
so I haven't. I haven't shot video as far as any type of big pictures or anything like that or videos. I eventually someday I would like to, but right now I'm sticking with photos and doing with that type of content. But eventually, maybe with my new project, once it's done, this will kind of turn into giving me an idea and confidence and say, see, you can do it, and just working on that and having people help me out.
Yeah, exactly. Now, what I want to do now is I'm going to share the screen. Give me one sec. Okay, so I'm going to share the screen. And I don't want to get too far ahead, but what's neat is I want to ask you this. You had submitted a couple of photos. Talk to us about you. I'm gonna show these photos on here, and I want to talk about like some of your, we'll call it top 5 photo shots, right? And there's 5 photos in here. I'm going to flash these, and I want people, hopefully if you're watching on YouTube, you're going to get a little bit richer experience. But I want people to see like the depth that you have. Like you're not a one trick pony, and nothing against one trick ponies. I'm just saying like you're a talented dude, right? So talk to us about these photos we're going to flash here. We'll start with the OBS. Kind of walk us through this feature shoot.
Okay, so this is Will's OBS from down in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. Will's a good friend. I've always loved his truck, and of course the OBS is that's my bread and butter, my wheelhouse, I guess you'd say. And so there's something about the way he built this truck. It was always been cool. And so he suggested this area, and this was an old Beechcraft like airport area. So these are hangars that they used to use back in the 50s and 60s, and they turned this into a park area. So there was no one around, and of course we could be out on this up next to this building. So that's why these windows and this building looks like something from that time period.
Yeah, very,
And
very.
so
And this is one of your top 5 shots.
yeah, this is one of my faves. And it's just with the lighting, the clouds had the perfect clouds just to give it some depth, from behind. I had my strobes, so I used the sun as far as the key light from the left of the vehicle and used my strobes on the back side to kind of light the shadow side and pop the wheels and the graphics that you can see. Because that truck has a kind of a ghost purple kind of lines going down the upper body line of that OBS. And so I wanted to make sure that that stood out because if you didn't, you're not going to know that that purple is in that paint if you didn't light it up. And so I like to use my lights to help pop and reflect some of that color so that the reader can see what's going on. So that's my big thing is I try to reproduce what I see so that it's done in the magazine and you can see that feature and the way that truck's been done.
Excellent. Let's go to the next one here. Now, this truck, I think I know the company that did the interior. This was an amazing shoot, and if I remember, Bob Grant was tied into doing a lot of work on this one.
Big time. Yeah, this was from my knowledge, it took a long time. There was a lot in and out of this truck. There was, this kind of evolved into what you see here. This is Nick's C10. I shot this after SEMA out there on the dry lake bed. And this was what's funny about this shoot is I had 4 trucks lined up. So next to the left and the right of this truck, I had 4 other trucks I was shooting, and we did this all at the crack of dawn. As you can see, the sun is slowly starting to come up over the mountains. And so this is where my wedding skills would come into play because you have to be accurate, know what you're doing. You can only spend so much time per truck, and you had to grab your shots before that sun comes up because if you've been out in the Vegas sun, well, no, once that sun's up, it's up, and paint's like the red one here, which is really tough to get correct because digital cameras don't like red paint real well. And so that was a big deal just to give this truck its due. Just a beautiful shot. And I think that that's something you don't see this in Kansas. So
Yeah,
I love shooting out the lake beds.
and I'm not a photographer, but I always appreciated like Johnny O, and it was cool Johnny O, but also Brian McCormick. So it was neat when Brandon
Yes.
Burrell had BMC on because
Oh yeah.
when I looked back, like it was neat because he would talk about how, and this is no disrespect because photography has become, I think, a little easier for a lot of people, right? Because I can have a point and click type digital deal. But like Brian was talking about, like what you're talking about, like the sun being in a certain spot, I got a certain amount of time, this and that. But I always loved when Brian McCormick would do these shoots and you would have almost this, I don't know if you call it a horizon effect or what it is, but like
Horizon line. Yep.
yeah, the horizon line, and it's so neat because there's, and I want the listeners to know the things we're talking about because it's when someone really sits down to shoot that knows what they're doing. They're talking about parking at this angle, you talk about getting these trucks out there at the crack of dawn. I mean, that in itself, you're telling the people, hey, can you be there at 3 a.m? And they're probably going, what? But when you have a reputation like Grant Cox has, they go, yeah, sure, no problem, we'll be there. Let's
Yeah.
go to the
It
next
was
one.
That's fun. So this is Jesse's CUDA. I shot this here in Wichita, and again, this one was done in the evening. Again because it's red, and this I kind of went back to um, my street rodder days and capturing shots like this. CUDAs are really cool. I've always thought CUDAs are, from the 70, 71, 72 CUDAs are just cool body lines. And this one, of course, is bagged. It's got a blown motor. It's got huge Foose wheels, big brakes. And, the Hemi is a ghosted, as you can see on the
Yeah.
back side of that quarter panel. And if you didn't, and that again, just like the other one, if you didn't light this car up very well, that blends in and you don't really notice it that well.
Yeah.
So this was another one. I kind of just wanted to show another shot that I loved. It's from the, retro muscle machine type cars that I've done.
Yeah, and then here showing your ability to kind of go in and out of different lines in terms of different vehicle makes, right? This is more of along the line something that, I mean, there's a huge market for these cars. It's not something I know much about, but talk to us about this shoot.
Yeah. So this is Jason's S13 Sylvia. So it's a right-hand drive that was imported over from Japan. And he's had this car for a long time and it's had a lot of customizations and it's got a real unique body kit on it. Everything's Japan aftermarket parts on this car. We shot this down by Lawton, Oklahoma. There is a cool wildlife park down there that I had no idea was down there. And so what I liked about this is, we shot this in the evening. As you can see, the pearl and the paint really pops with the strobes and the sun. So I wanted to recreate like a Japanese photo shoot. That's something you would see in the magazines, like in Super Street. Well, I shot this for Super Street. And so this ran in that magazine. I wanted to, like, hey, us in the Midwest can have some cool looking shots too of, Japan, authentic Japan tuner cars. And so I
So
wanted to recreate that. And this area was, no one was on this road. And we just had a blast taking pictures, doing rollers, and just having that background that's Oklahoma. And you would not think that was Oklahoma.
yeah, no, definitely not. And that's a cool thing too, because it gets you out to, a big Indiana Jones fan. I know you're not out, maybe hiking, but it's like you kind of are exploring a little bit, finding some areas, some terrain that you didn't know about, maybe a park, and that's so neat.
Yes.
Next, we got the
It's good.
Yanko. I don't know much about Camaros, but I do know if it's got the Y word attached to it, it's like big.
Right. So this is I want to say reproduction Yanko Camaro that was licensed by a builder from Parcel, Oklahoma called Heartland Customs. Jeff Page is the owner, and this was their build. We did this out on an airfield in Oklahoma, and I wanted a nice clean shot, so we had a clean tarmac. I used my strobes again, lit it up on the dark side, the shadow side, and let the sun kind of pop all the edges and curves in this black paint. Of course, they build phenomenal Corvettes, and this was their first Camaro build. And so it was a great shoot and that's fun. But yes, that was a 69 Camaro that was a Yanko edition.
Yeah, and I wanted people, the YouTube viewers, to kind of see, right? I think artists sometimes call like, what's your color palette, right, or whatnot. Or I kind of like think of as like, if you have brushstroke, right? I mean, it's like you've got a lot of different things that you can kind of pull out of your professional bag, if you will, to kind of go, wow, look, let's dial this in. Oh, it's going to run in Thailand. It's going to run in Japan. And that's the neat thing too about the worldwide presence that we have. Because when I had Fosom on, they're a hip hop group out of California. They talked about this, said, hey, just because maybe you're not seeing us doing something in the US, Japan's really loves the G Funk and things like that. And you mentioned Thailand. I've come across a couple of these videos, and I'm sure you've seen and heard of them, these collectors, if you will, that live in Thailand that build these whole entire homes that have everything, the whole JDM stuff. And like the collections is like, how can any one person amass that amount of stuff, right? It's so neat to me to
Yeah,
see the worldwide like collective enthusiasm for the automotive culture.
it is. It's a worldwide thing that's enjoyed everywhere.
Now, I want to jump over to this. And now these were some, just to kind of help tell the story. These are some random photos that we agreed that we were going to kind of discuss a little bit too. And what this is, for those that don't know, this is like that area where a lot of the photographers, after SEMA ends on Friday is the rollout.
Friday.
You
Yeah,
start
so this is
sliding stuff up for whatever
yeah, so
you
this
can,
is
whatever.
Saturday morning.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Saturday, Sunday, Monday, whatever. Exactly. Yep. And this is neat because this is out there in
Yeah.
that area.
Yeah, so this was go ahead.
No. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, we set this up going home. We trailered this is my 2010 GMC that we called Project Wingman, and this was the SEMA 2015. And so on our way home through Henderson, we pulled out, and over here, this was a dry lake bed that was south of Henderson, and so I got to shoot my truck down there, and for the feature for street trucks. So this truck that I called Project Wingman was the truck that I bought, and I'd drive. It was my daily, and I'd take it to all my photo shoots. And so the basis behind this truck was it was my wingman that went everywhere with me, and I like to talk about the parts and manufacturers that's on the truck, and to show clients and my any of the shops that I did, that I took pictures for, um, you know how the good quality parts that went on it, and the flames and the pinstriping and the sound system and so on and so forth. And so when it got picked to go into the Hypertech booth there in SEMA and Hot Rod Alley, I was just stoked. So that was my first time to have my own vehicle in there. That was a bucket list of mine since I knew that SEMA. I've been going to SEMA since '01. I think was my first year going to SEMA. I've been a dozen or so times, and that was really neat to be able to have my truck in there, and I had my best friends go with me. We road tripped it, and it's just the best of times.
Yeah, very cool. And people can see, if you're watching on YouTube, there's the final kind of product, if you will, which is kind of neat because you see the progression of the feature shoot on the dry lake, SEMA, and then boom, there you go. Some of the other photos. And it's neat too because so many people want to have like this bucket list thing to go, hey, I want to have a vehicle at SEMA. And it's like, hey, you're kind of like, I've already done it. You got to participate in the rollout. Here's a Brian Frost SoCal Customs photo.
Yeah,
And that
yeah,
had to have been a good memory for you.
it was. I'm glad he took that because I didn't know who or what would be capturing pictures and what I'd catch afterwards. And once I saw Brian take that shot, I'm like, good, I have that memory. And there's some of my friends rolling out with me. And that was the big thing, is just being there with my best friends and doing this together. And we're all car guys, and get to experience something that not very many people get to experience. And it is a truly a great thing. But
And there's
the
the
build
rent.
series was great. We had a lot of great support from manufacturers and local shops, and so it was fun.
Cool. Talk to us about this extended cab.
Yeah. So I talked about how OBS life, and so my love. Oh gosh, I want to say it was probably. Let's see, I went to college at K State in '90. Let's go back, I guess, a little bit more. We'll go back to my mini truck stuff. So I had I had that little right there, my Isuzu. So I went from a Datsun, and I had that for most of my high school time. Once it came time for college, a friend was selling his '91 Isuzu, and so this was his personal truck that he built. And yes, it had a sound wall of 615s behind, all Orion XTRs, had custom door panels. He did IASCA sound competitions for SPL in this truck back in the days. And so I had this in this configuration for a little bit. Then once I found out that, going to college with this kind of much of stereo work in the back of it probably wasn't the best as a college kid, and leaving it outside and having something like this just sitting out beside your dorm probably wasn't the best.
Right.
And so we removed it, and I just had it basically just an open blow through. So it was great for college because I can haul my stuff back and forth. But
Yeah.
I kept most of the stereo stuff in it. But that was my mini truck life was my Datsun and this 91 Isuzu, and then it grew into the white, that 90 step side. So that was about 95. That's when I saw this truck locally, and it was slammed. It was on 4.6 drop on 17-inch weld, Tomahawk billet wheels. It had a full complete stereo system with a blow through. It was from a owner of one of the audio shops here in Wichita, and I had to have it. So once I got into the full size truck life, and that was the sport truck days. The Sport Truck magazine,
Sure.
Truckin, and I fell in love with it. And I really that's when the OBS stuff just really clicked with me. And so I had that one for quite a while, for a couple of years, and then I went to I won't say another. I had the 454 SS. That was a 90. So that was later, but later on, I was 2003, I guess. That was at Slamboree. Then so after that white step side, I had this 91.
Yeah. So this
And it was
OBS non-stepper.
yeah, it was one of my classmates, his dad, who kind of was my car dad, I'd call him. He taught me a lot about hot rods and working on things, and it was his personal truck. And I bought it from him, and just evolution of stuff. I took it on hot rod power tours. I did all kinds of car shows, and this was its final rendition of it, I guess. Before I sold it, I had chrome illusion DuPont paint graphics that matched the billet specialty twin spin wheels,
Yeah.
matching billet steering wheel. The whole interior was decked out in all the polished billet because in the 90s that's what we did.
Oh yeah.
It's that type of stuff. So
And then
and
what about
then
this blue one? I'm curious about it.
so this blue one is my current one. So this one here I just picked up last year. I've been itching to get back into the OBS life.
And this is the one you're building right now, or this is a daily?
No, this isn't the one I'm building right now. This is my next project truck that I'm working on, and it will be just a show truck. This is going to be my fun truck. But the extended cab, if you want to,
Yeah, let me go back here.
with the full graphics there, one right there. So that extended cab I had in the mid 2000s. It was my first bag truck, on 22-inch Boyds. My friends and we did the graphics. I did the pinstriping on it, and that was another blow-through truck. Had 215 kicker solo barracks in it, and I had that truck. That was a good time. This was when I was in a car club or truck club called Forever Low, Kansas chapter.
Sure.
I was in Forever Low, Kansas chapter from I want to say probably 98 through to 2006 or so, is when I kind of got out of having a car show or having a car or a truck to show. And so I just kind of, once I had kids, and kids kind of took my life, with
took a
being
break.
busy and doing that kind of stuff. So,
Yeah,
that was my last OBS I had.
Yeah, one thing that
Yeah,
stands out is the grill. Is this one of the ones that had it shaved, or you shaved it?
No, I shaved that. Yeah, so that was the original chrome grill, and the truck was the bottom color, that beige color when I bought it. It was just one color, and then I was taught how to mold in and smooth that out, so it took out the bow tie, and then we took out all the chrome, changed all the bumpers, so it's all no chrome on the truck, and two-toned it, and then, like I said, gave that 2000s look of the graphic paint job with the pinstripes in the middle, typical 2000s sport truck or type of deal.
Yeah. And what's neat is like you see all these different trucks that you've had over the course of time. The blue truck, the regular cab, that's one, my understanding, right? So I showed you guys at the beginning, if you think about where Grant lives, when you drive south, you have been documenting this Fat Fabs build. And are people going to be able to see that and follow all of that? Where are they going to be able to see all that? CK magazine?
Right, CK. So I have a build series that I'm documenting for pictures and video. I wanted to do a build series on kind of the evolution of buying that truck. That 95, it was a two owner grandpa truck with 72,000 miles, just a cherry of a truck. I found it on Marketplace up in Kansas City. And it just a cream puff of a truck. And that was, I've never had a 95. So, and I've always wanted that blue. And
Does it have the blue
so
interior?
it has a blue
That's what I
interior. It
had on
has,
my Suburban. It has I love, like, the little pull-out cup holder, and then it has, instead of the airbag, the little cup look. I mean, not that you put a can of Coke or whatever, but
yeah, you're not putting anything on it. Yeah, only when you're sitting you can do that. I mean, when you're driving, you're not doing that. But yes, it has all that. It's a Silverado, with the 5.7, and it's the last year of the TBI, which is what I wanted because of the engine bay's a lot cleaner. It doesn't have all the computer stuff and the spider injection and all that type of stuff. So I wanted that old school TBI motor that I'm used to working on and doing things to, and I just like that motor. And because this truck's gonna be slow and low. I'm not putting an LS in it. I'm not making it loud. I'm not racing it. I just want to be slammed and good sound system in it, and just a fun cruise truck that I can take anywhere, or go to a good guy show, or go to shows like LST or Slamboree, and just have fun with my friends and other guys that my age that they've also gotten their OBS trucks or C10s, back again. And it's kind of like bringing the boys back together, our trucks. We're kind of that age, and doing that together. So,
yeah,
but yes,
and that
back to this
era.
truck.
Yeah, and that era of, you think back to the old magazines, like when when Trends was releasing so much billet, and Empire, now there's LG billet, and but all of that goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning too, because we grew up in a great era, and some of us, like, maybe didn't have the full money or the situation where life brought us at that time to do something. So we're kind of reliving our high school, call it our, early adult memories.
Yes. Yeah. And, speaking of with Fat Fabs and the involvement with this 95 truck that I've called Blue Steel from Derek Zoolander, so my family, my kids and my wife named it Blue Steel because when I bought that truck and I'd go cruising around with it, my wife or my kids would be in there. It's just a single cab, so I couldn't take everybody. But everybody just stopped and just gave this look like Blue Steel, the look,
Sure.
And so that's what, hey, your truck's blue, you should call it Blue Steel. So that's why it's named Blue Steel. But Jake Miggity who the owner of Fat Fabs, I've known him for a good 15 years, and we've always just talked about, man, do OBS, how cool would it be able to do this, and what do you think about this, and just talking back and forth for many, many years. And if someday, if I could get this rounded up, I want you to be able to do this and work together with me, and let's do something cool. And he's like, oh yeah. So found the truck. Got some good partners to work with me on parts. We got AccuAir, Willwood, BAD billet wheels, Schloss tubs. We have AMD. We have Wham rods. So all of that parts are going into this build, and we're building the truck down at Jake's shop. And the guys down there, Sean and the crew, are just amazing. This their metal fabrication and their skills and making the truck unique, and not just, hey, I'm just going to bag a truck, So I'm just doing bagging with the lay frame, and they're building a lot of new parts for the OBS community, like AR front. They're redoing the front kit. They're making a brand new 4-link kit for the rear, a cross member kit. So there's a lot of new parts that's come to the market for the OBS lifestyle that on the 88 to 98 single and extended cab trucks. So
Yeah.
that's something new for the.
And for those that don't know, you can show your shirt there. It's, many of you already know, but it's Fat Fabs. It's PHAT and then PHABZ. Many of you know them. In fact, I think Jake was featured on, I forget, it was like I don't want to say it was it was kind of a wacky-ish car show where I think they did a feature, and it was something I remember seeing it. I was somewhere and I was like, wow, I forget what channel it was on, but obviously their place has blown up over the years because they specialize in what they say bag and body drops, right? So that's very cool that you've kind of partnered with them. Like, when do you, I mean, we always want to finish stuff sooner rather than later, but like, do you foresee like a 2025? Is this like a 2026? Like, what are you thinking?
I'm hoping to debut it at Slamboree 2025. So that's the end of July, if all things go well. So
Nice.
we're getting close to having it done. So that's why I haven't posted any pictures or video, because it's going into CK magazine. I'm also doing video for Jake's YouTube channel as a build series so that they can have something to show the evolution of this truck as it's being pulled in, stock looking truck, to it coming out and it, being what it is.
Oh yeah, that's so cool. We can't wait to see more. Now, I do want to talk about a 64 Lincoln that you shot. But
Yes.
if people want to, I've got a couple of my notes here, but if people want to find more information, and let them hear it from you. Where would they find more intel on you?
Well, I'm on Facebook and Instagram at Grant Cox Photo. Then also the website Grant Cox Photos on my website, but I don't post a ton. I do more Instagram, just here and there, sharing what features are out and kind of products are out there or any ads that I've shot for. But that's Instagram and Facebook is the mainly two things that I just post on.
Now, if you happen to Google Grant Cox, just how it sounds,
Yes.
right? Grant mentioned like the website, you could land here on this a beautiful Wix site that you put together. But I wanted people to see this because, like, for instance, I always remember this photo on the Dakota Digital website, right?
Yes.
I think that was Slosh Tubbs's wife,
And that's Sarah's K5.
Sarah's
Tapped
K5,
out
and
square peg.
yeah,
And
and
that's the interior for it.
yeah, just these beautiful photos, and obviously you can link out here to the main socials and things like that. But I wanted people to see that because, like, you're kind of this guy that maybe not everybody knows their name. I think like the true enthusiasts in the scene do, but I want people to know, like, dude, like, you've put the flag in the ground, like, you've put the work in. And what I also want to reinforce too, and I'm going to ask if you have any advice for like someone that's up and coming, right? But like, you and I talked and we're like, okay, well, we're straight out of the 70s, right? So somebody that might be like, hey, I've always wanted to do this. And Grant just kind of gave me a timeline of like, he kind of really got going in the publishing stuff in the past 12, 13 years, right? Call it 12 and a half.
Correct.
Now, granted, you have been following your hobby, but I want people to know that, like, if you have a dream and you want to do something, they can do it. They can get out there and do it.
Definitely. Yes, it is. It's the passion is there. There's still tons of creativity with video and photography and making and drones. Lots of stuff to be able to create your own look and your own brand.
Yeah. What, like, if you were to give someone one piece of advice, and it could be like maybe something that you always think about, if somebody goes, man, if somebody asks you, what do you wish someone told you, when you were 15, 18, 21 years old, as it relates to photography, as it relates to this industry, is there just one piece of advice that you would give someone?
I'd say just go after your goals and try your best so that you know that you have given it your all. Don't just go, hey, oh, I shot this car and it looks like crap. I'm stop. Everybody thinks it's trash. Well, find out why. And learn from that, and just try to hone and keep working on it. And then if you tried it for a year and nothing's panning out, maybe it's just not for you, or something else is out there for you that maybe is your style.
Like it. I do want to show this real quick too. Hopefully everybody will be able to see this. This was it's funny because it's on Hot Rod's website, as you know. You and I talked about this car. It's funny. The only pet peeve I have is that they have it listed as a 61 Lincoln. It's a 64. We know that. But this was a pretty cool photo shoot. And again, it shows that, hey, you don't just shoot trucks. You could do it all. And if I recall correctly, this was an opportunity that you had to go to a gentleman's home. And that had to have been unique because it gives you a little bit more flexibility, right? You don't have to worry about somebody complaining or asking, hey, what the hell are you doing?
Right. Yeah, this was another. This was for Street Rodder magazine. So my editor asked me if I could go down to Texas to shoot this, and this was San Antonio, south of San Antonio. It was down kind of in the southwest side of Texas, and so I was doing a family trip, kind of going down through that way, and so we stopped on our family trip at the owner's house, and it ended up being really cool. For this is his driveway that out in front of his house, and shot this in the evening, as you can see the nice horizon line on the car, and it was straight black, and I was trying to keep all the reflections out, so all I had to deal with was the gray, driveway, and everything else was cool. So, but this was a beautiful car that was done right out at his house, and he just had a perfect property to showcase this car.
Yeah, and I'm going to try to use this excerpt on my Lincoln Addict podcast. And what's funny is, like in Lincoln's, we call it Lincoln Life, that you'll rarely ever see a Lincoln that doesn't leak. If it's anywhere near kind of, even if it's a full restoration. On this Lincoln, what was unique too is you've got these trim pieces that are typically here in 64, right? And they're, so you've got that full black look, you've got a billet wheel, you've got like a T-bird style scoop, which is pretty rare. There's only a handful of Lincolns that have done that quote mod. You've got a passenger mirror, which wasn't available then, but these are reproduced and they look fantastic. But what's neat too is it has the super rare bucket seats. And when you look at this interior photo, like, okay, yeah, it's a full custom interior, but you really wouldn't know. You're like, it looks super clean. So I think like that's another aspect that, it kind of just shows, like you said, black, hot rod, different times of the day. It just really shows that, like, there's nothing that can be thrown at you without, you being able to go, hey, no problem, I got it. Hold my brewski, hold my liquid death.
Yes, yeah. The Texas summer heat. It was at least the sun was down. Let's just say I'm glad for that. But yes, I was sweating buckets still in that Texas heat.
Well, yeah. Well, what's neat is we talked about so much, when I think back, you've got this Fat Fabs build going, you've had plenty of OBS trucks. And oh, by the way, when I was listening to the Pal Parole, well, it was the Bones Brigade audio show. It's neat because I will listen to two of the Back to the Future episodes they did, and they try to always, they go, well, how can we tie it back to Bones Brigade? And with your interview, like, we could tie it back to mini trucking because you've established, like, hey, I had a mini truck, and we talked about a couple features, one in particular that you got credit for, which was the Outcast hardbody December 2012, which was super neat. So I like to be able to kind of tie that stuff back in. We definitely could do another episode where we talk about all the cool stuff that we're into. I know briefly I want to touch upon, like, we came up in an era that we both agree was epic, but you think about the bike stuff. I know you're kind of dabbling a little bit in that, but like so many, like, we get a little discouraged because we're like, wow, these prices are kind of crazy. But my advice to anyone out there is, like, if you really want to get a retro bike, you can do it economically. You just got to kind of wait it out, check the marketplaces of the world, the eBays. But I know that you're maybe looking to possibly incorporate one into your build.
Yeah, in my blue steel, yes, I wanted to get a 95 or period correct, BMX bike more than a freestyle bike because I didn't have freestyle bikes. I could do a little bit of freestyle, but I was more of I like to jump, I like to go fast, I like to race people. So I would like to eventually have a period correct BMX, a GT. I've always been a GT guy, and so we'll see what happens. But yes, sure, the prices are, yeah, it's kind of like the OBS right now. It's skyrocketed, and
They're on the
there's
rise.
amazing bikes out there, and I love watching all the YouTube videos like Rad BMX and seeing all those guys build stuff up, and it's neat to see all the old parts still around and the new old stock, and just the creativity and seeing what's being made
Yeah.
and the new frames from
Like GT. I know, like,
from GT. Yeah, Gary Turner. Yeah,
yeah,
his
him and
son's
his
helping
son,
out and doing stuff.
yep. Yeah, and that's the neat thing because, like, Sean will tell people, hey, everything I have isn't like vintage 1987, 1988, but you wouldn't know by watching his videos. And that's the neat thing. And I tell people all the time, even if somebody wants to harp on someone and go, oh, well, your stuff's not all vintage and all this stuff. It's like, okay, well, do you have an OBS that has all Empire Motorsports and trends from that era? There are a few guys that do. Don't get me wrong, right? But it's like LG is now making the billet AC vents. Congrats to them. That's fantastic, right? That's okay, right? You want to have that look, and that's cool. So I definitely appreciate the discussion there. I do. Before we end, though, I try to tie this in. My understanding is you work in the airplane kind of industry too, and I think Kansas, what used to be called, possibly still, the airplane
Aviation
capital.
capital.
Aviation, that's the word I'm looking for. Aviation capital of the world.
Yeah,
But
so
you're involved in that industry, right?
yeah, so that's my day job. I've been doing that since '96, so I'm coming up on 30 years being in the aviation aircraft business, and small parts, electromechanical type parts. And so that's just kind of been my 9 to 5 job, and here in Wichita, and then photography is my fun money, and getting to do what I love and meeting people, and I like making all my friends and new friends that I meet, dreams come true, getting them in the magazines, because that's really neat to have a feature, and that shows your hard work, and showcases builders and vendors, product and what they can do. And I'm glad I can be able to be a part of that industry and give back. And at least I have something in that I can do, because I can't do everything. I'm not a painter, welder and all that type of stuff, but I can do my part and help out, the industry, and do what I can.
Yeah, dude, much love. It's been awesome sitting down with you. I can't, thank you enough. I know you always look out as you can with CK Magazine. I would tell people, if you're interested in the OBS stuff and a little bit more, check out CK on your newsstand as well as their
Yes.
website. You can buy those issues. Grant Cox, like you said, Grant Cox Photography. I'll put a couple links in the description to the YouTube video, so you can check him out there. And it's been an honor, dude, to kind of sit down and get to know you. I know some of your homies, they always come through. Your one buddy that works at the dealership, and it's great to get to know somebody that I seen the name in magazines and publications, and I tip my cap to your hard work, ethic, and just your hustle in general, Grant.
I appreciate it. Yeah, it's great talking to you, Jason. I appreciate being on here, and love what you do, and keep up with the good work with your podcast and everything you tell. You're a good storyteller, and I appreciate that.
Hey, thanks. Like I said at the top, huge shout out to Scraping the Coast, our title sponsor. I want to give a huge shout out to Hammered Weekend Wear. I'm wearing the Steel Flame shirt, one of my favorite mini trucks. Stay on the rise, Grant, and we'll talk soon.
All right, good talking.